Exercise number 1. How does an object move? So we've chosen a whole load of objects here that we've got in the table, and we're going to be looking at those objects and imagining how they might move. So I'm going to choose one of the objects just to demonstrate to you about how this is played, basically, and it's just looking at the certain aspects of properties of those materials that might give you a sensation about how they might move. And you can actually play and move with the object yourself if you'd like to develop those skills, and hopefully you can do it anytime you're waiting or looking at particular objects, and just start to think how they might move. So this spoon, for example, if it's there and it's going to start moving, well, obviously it's not going to suddenly sort of walk around. Now that's more like puppetry, which I sort of showed you right at the beginning. We're looking at the material itself. So if that object was to move without flying or walking, then it might have a sense that it might move in one direction, that it might actually slide on a floor because it's got a slippy surface, and it might be some sort of slippy sort of object that can move like a little silver fish or a very, very fast sports car, but it would move around the space like that. It's just the first stage of us looking at these objects. We've got a sponge here. Now that's very different, because if that was to move of its own accord, then it's got something really magical about it. It's basically got sponginess. So that sponginess we can use to help in its movements, because it can contract and it can actually expand. And it can contract, it can expand. So that in itself can create a sense of movement on the floor on its own. And then there's another object here, which is a sieve that we have in the kitchen. Again, if that was to move of its own accord, now depending on which way it is round, because it could be that way on the table or that way, I suppose. I had it this way, so let's just play with that. Now it's got an edge to it, and like we've got edges to it, we move in a certain way on our particular edges. Now this thing, to start moving, it might actually have a sense that it's moving around its edge, and that's how it might move. Just baby steps really at this stage with these particular objects. We've got a rubber glove. So how might that rubber glove move? Now I'm imagining the rubber glove would go in one direction. Maybe it might go finger first. So actually it's still quite contraction. It can have sort of a extendable material about it, so it can actually move again like a little bit like a slug. Actually, I quite like that. That's quite nice. But again, it can contract and can move, but nothing too fantastical at this stage. It's not going to start waving around the room. We're just moving it in baby steps with its own sense of gravity and everything like that. This is quite an interesting one. A piece of wool. Now a piece of wool, you might say it's got quite a wobbliness to it, which is it might just sort of wobble around. There might be something about its jiggliness that can actually move around, but there might be something like the actual element of it that might explore. It might have one little tentacle that pulls out and sort of stretches really, really long, and then that moves the whole body of the rest of the shape, or not, or just separates, as in the case it did there. So there's just a few examples of how you sort of walking your objects very slowly through different ways of actually having movement themselves.